is there a part in the process where you would expect somebody on one of your courses to flip from relying on the technical information to relying more on their intuition? Where do you think that fold happens, and do you think that fold happens?
If we're thinking about beginner drummer and the end result is master drummer. Master drummer, like the unhelpful but great clinician said, is not thinking a lot of thoughts while they're playing the drums. They're opening the faucet and things are just coming out, which means they are relying heavily on intuition. The technical aspects are all there. They're not thinking about them because those have become easy for them. They're automatic, just like riding a bike is actually remarkably complicated, but you don't think about it when you do it. You're just good at it. Early drummer is pure technical work, right? Just holding the sticks, hitting the drums, basic coordination. You have almost no choice but to work on only technical things. And this tells us something really interesting about intuition. So intuition relies on automation and or relies on experience with relevant subject matter. Intuition itself can seem sort of smushy and mystical, but it's really not when you think of it this way. So I was thinking of very randomly, as an example, a kid who had a good friend, a childhood friend, but the friend was a little deceitful, right? He'd stretch the truth. He'd sometimes lie. You know, everyone had like a kid in their history that was kind of just like a little untrustworthy. So you spend years and years and years constantly hanging out with this totally fine friend. But you start to develop over time a really keen intuition of when they're telling the truth and when they might be stretching it, or when they might be being a little bit deceitful or something, right? And it's little things. It's the way that their intonation changes. It's the way that their eyes move, the way they hold their head, some kind of fidget that they might do. So if that was your friend growing up, you develop a pretty keen intuition for knowing, even as an adult, way later, when people are being real with you and when they might not be. So now you're 30 years old and someone's presenting a business idea and you just kind of walk away from it feeling like, I don't think I want to go into business with a guy. I don't think he's going to follow through. I think he's stretching the truth about the potential of this opportunity or something. What's so amazing about this, and I think this is really one of the most interesting things about humans, being human, everything that we've described so far happens subconsciously, right? So at no point as a kid did you remark consciously on the intonation change, the way that he holds his face, the way that he fidgets, but it gets programmed, right? Thousands of experiences with this phenomenon get programmed. You're an adult, you have this intuition that tells you this doesn't feel right. You also, if someone asked, couldn't tell them why, right? You can't actually identify what it was about what they did, but you know. So everything remains subconscious. So all of the experiences you have that are relevant to this, they create a filter. And as you encounter the world in the present moment, it goes through that filter and gives you, when this is what intuition is, a feeling of rightness or wrongness relevant to the matter at hand. And again, what's beautiful about this is if someone asks you, how did you learn this? You probably can't think of a single instance because it is thousands of instances. If someone says, why do you feel this intuition about this person? You might fabricate an idea. We tend to do that. And when you study psychology, you realize we're making up a lot of reasons, post hoc. But you probably can't actually explain technically what it was, right? So everything is subconscious, but you are presented with a feeling of rightness and wrongness. The musical equivalent of this is really interesting, and this does lead to your question eventually about the technical and the intuition, is that when you're thinking about things that are a bit intangible, like groove, does it groove? Is it in the pocket? Musicality, the balance of sounds, right? These are all things where there is no objective correct answer. But in your life, you are experiencing tens of thousands of musical experiences that feed that filter, that create that filter, so that when you receive information or are going to put information out, it goes through that same filter. And though you might not be able to describe with any useful words why this fill and not that fill, this groove and not this placement of hi-hats and not that placement of hi-hats is the right thing, right? This feeling of rightness and musically, musical coolness, if you will. You can't remember a single instance that fed the filter. You can't really describe why it's happening, but you know that it's the right thing, right? And this is how intuition works. And I think it's important to just paint a picture of intuition that isn't mystical, magical, inherited, you've either got it or you don't, and the moon is in the right place kind of thing, right? It's all experience, and your experiences prepare you for every moment, and that creates the filter through which you interpret the world. And that's why people say, like, okay, in order to play jazz right, you have to listen to a whole lot of jazz, right? You have to play jazz. You have to play a lot of jazz, and then you'll start to sound like a jazz cat. Why is that? You need experience. You need to just accumulate the hearing and the certain idiomatic like licks or whatever. So anyways, that's intuition to me, at least in a nutshell. When we think about technical aspects, on the drum set, if I, through all my intuition of listening to music, have a keen intuition for what sounds good, it's not helpful for me as a drummer if I can't execute that thing, if I can't create it, right? So people, when they talk about Dilla and they talk about the aesthetics, we think about like a lot of like African music or like Latin American music is like, it sort of adheres to the grid and it's out of time, but it's in time in a big sense. That can't be notated in any useful way. And no one can really explain why or how it is created or it feels that way. But you know that that's what you need to do in order to get there. So building the technical facility that enables you to deliver those fine-tuned adjustments is a prerequisite for even allowing that intuition to come to life in your playing, right? So you have to have options. And that's like sort of step one of learning to improvise is we need some basic options. We need that comfort zone. Once that comfort zone is easy, the reason the comfort zone has to become automated and thoughtless and mindless and open the faucet and let it run is because then you have enough automation happening where intuition can have a chance of coming in. And when you think about drumming, it's not only the experiences of listening to music that feed your intuition, it's the experience of playing, right? Every note you play, everything you string together contributes to that filter of your output as well as the sort of re-input into your listening to your own playing. So I can tell you, you have a great intuition. Here's a harp, play me some great music, but it's obviously not going to help until you have a certain amount of proficiency technically on the instrument. And as you can imagine, it's all about control. The more proficiency you have on the drums is a great example because it's so simple. All we are doing is learning to control our limbs better and when they hit, right? And this in the beginning is play in time. I need to play in time. And then as you get past that, I'm going to play kind of out of time, but on purpose, I'm going to have like all these, this push and pull that's innate to my playing that, again, I can't really describe, but that I can control. So the better you get at controlling your limbs, the more options you have for placing the notes in certain ways that create a certain feeling. Why does it create that feeling? I don't know, but it feels right. And I know that the reason I feel that is because I've listened to a million songs and, that has created the filter. So anyways, it's a back and forth. And in my teaching, the way that I try to develop the courses, and even on a per lesson basis, is we do technical stuff because the technical stuff expands what you can possibly do.
Mm.
And then I always encourage students to spend, a third of their practice time basically doing creative practice mode, which is like improvising at the tempo you were just practicing with the tools you were just developing. And ideally, in those moments, you're turning off the conscious like tracking of patterns. You've gotten comfortable enough with the exercises so that your intuition can start to step in, and you can start to play with the stuff and really hear the patterns and make them automatic and stuff.